All right. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, um, I welcome everyone to the podcast, to the Two Paths and One Search podcast. The main reason, personally, myself and Theo have embarked on this podcast is, frankly, a lot of us are lost. We really are, in terms of our direction, in terms of what life even is for us. And the whole world, wherever you look nowadays, contains hundreds of lies behind it. For many people who question things and search for answers and look for the truth, this has become a very hard reality for us to live in. And the more and more you think about it, the one and only thing that we have that is true and evident to us that no one can change is God and our faith. Which is exactly why we have to put time and effort into understanding our own ideals, core beliefs, and what we actually have our faith in. This is the only way we can stay on the correct path and go towards the answer to our search. But yeah, Theo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I've been a Christian my whole life. Um, but you look around and there's a lot of shit going on in the world, and as a lot of Christians nowadays, I find it kind of hard to handle that. So my intention of being on here is to sort of explore that and explore the other faiths. Irfan here, he's a good friend of mine, and he has some different beliefs than me, but I believe that we're searching for the same thing, and it'll do a lot of good to learn from each other and work through our lives and our spirituality together.
Yeah. I myself, my name is Irfan. I am a born Muslim. However, I have read biblical texts. I have studied the Bible many occasions. I've debated with Theo a lot about the issue as well. And our main goal is to put our ideals together and find the truth to it all, see where the answers lie. So, the topics for today's podcast, um, I myself, I'm going to explain briefly the story of Imam Hussein and the Islamic teachings and that he taught us. Theo will be talking about a biblical story in relation to our two main questions. The first one is the idea for the greater good morally acceptable within our religions? Number two, which is more of a personal day to day thing, is how far can you go or should you go to achieve your end goals? So, Theo, if you don't mind, I'll start it off with quickly the story of Imam Hussein and how I relate these things to the topics. So,
Of course.
the start of Islam came from Muhammad. Um, Pretty much Muhammad. I'm not going to get into great details, but he had to fight a lot of battles against those really rich tribal leaders that wanted to end his beliefs, his followers, because they saw him as a threat. So many times he was attacked, he had to fight to survive, for his people to not get slaughtered. And in the end, through not war, but through faith, a lot of people turned to his side, even his enemies. And that's when Islam really got its roots. The passing of Muhammad was followed by the election of Hazrat Ali, we call him, which is the cousin of Muhammad. He was appointed by the people against his own will. He didn't really want to become the next leader as the new leader of Muslims. And he also had to fight a few battles against a few groups that remained from the time of the enemies of Muhammad, and a few main points that we saw through his battles and through his conduct in warfare. One of them being uh, there's a point where his troops were cut off from a river. I don't remember the exact name of the river, but his troops were cut off and they had to march for like a week or something and with very low water supplies because the enemy cut them off from the water sources to get to the other water source. Many of them got dehydrated and died along the way in the hot Middle Eastern deserts, you can imagine. Um, a few years later, in the same war that was going on, Ali cut off his enemies from the water supply. He was between the enemies and the water. However, in his case, he ordered his troops to deliver uh, barrels and wagons of water to the enemy soldiers. So that was one of those things. In one instance, he had a fortress surrounded, and rather than starving the city out, he would regularly bring in rations and food into the city for the populace to survive. The passing of Ali, he was assassinated inside of a mosque where he was praying, saw a man by the name of Yazid to take power. Yazid was not any spiritual leader, not any prophet that we know, that we accept. I mean, to some of us, I guess. But rather, he was a noble. He was a rich noble at the time, and he rose to power out of position and influence. And his conduct was unacceptable to a lot of Muslims' beliefs. He did not, he did not have the compassion to his enemies that we require in our books. He used Quran text in order to justify wrongful actions. He would twist words and do despicable things. At the time, after Ali passed, his grandson, Imam Hussein, was also a very influential person. During this time, Imam Hussein was ordered by Yazid to, bend the knee and join his court. And Imam Hussein refused over and over again. And he just stayed uninvolved. He would stay with his village. He had no political power or military influence or anything like that. And there came a point where Yazid was invading a town called um, Kufa. Uh, yeah, Kufa, I believe that's how you pronounce it, sorry. Um, and the people of Kufa were a sect of Islam that Yazid didn't like. So when he asked them to convert, they said no. So he decided to invade them. The people of Kufa reached out to Imam Hussein and said, "Hey, please come and lead us." And at this point, Imam Hussein, despite not even being the same sect as the people of Kufa, he gathered his family members, anyone who wanted to go with him, to go and lead the defense of Kufa. Um, on his travels there, on his way there, what happens is Yazid gets there first. He takes over Kufa, and the people of Kufa submit before Hussein even reaches there. And now, once again, Yazid tells Hussein to stand down and to join his court, or he will be killed. At this point, like Hussein probably has a few hundred people with him, of just family members and really close village followers and stuff like that. And he makes a very famous speech. I'm not going to get into exactly the words of it, but he pretty much says to all of his people, "You guys have the choice of joining him. I will not condemn any of you. However, my life without its dignity is not a worth living." That's pretty much word by word. He decided that it would be better to fight and die with honor and dignity because a life without dignity isn't worth living. And humiliation and was not something he was going to accept. This is a direct quote, yeah. So human life only has value as long as its dignity stays intact. Okay. And what ends up happening is Yazid with thousands of troops. He doesn't even tell his troops who they're going to fight because a lot of his troops actually would never fight Imam Hussein because they believe him as, the grandson of the Prophet Ali. But so he doesn't tell them who they're fighting. They go there, they surround this small group in their caravan, and to the very last man, Hussein fights and dies with his entire family. Everyone other than his wife is killed. The people, the soldiers that fought them, a lot of them felt so much shame because they're like, oh, we just killed the son of the grandson of the prophet, and they didn't know that was happening. So they couldn't bring themselves to kill Hussein's wife and like inner family, his kids and stuff. However, Yazid ordered them to be brought to him. His wife's name was Fatima, and in front of the entire like cohort, Yazid's cohort, he brings Fatima out in front of everyone and he tells her, now do you see that your beliefs were wrong and God was not on your side? You have been defeated. And famously, Fatima responds with, this was God's plan and it's the most beautiful thing that it could happen. And she says that millions of people for generations to come will see today as a day that oppression was stopped. And then she is also killed after. So, the few main points I took from this myself, as well as many Muslim scholars take from this, is that there's three main ones: justice, dignity, and maintaining your inner freedom. And the overlying message of this is that the ends do not ever justify the means. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a few minutes. So when I say justice, Hussein, first of all, guys, the story of Imam Hussein isn't meant to be a story for Muslims. It's not meant to be a story just for me to find inspiration from. This is a story of just a man and his fight against an oppressive person who he thought that was against what his beliefs. And I hope you guys also see the inspiration in the story I told you. Um, but yeah, so for justice, when the people of Kufa asked Hussein, that's when he felt the direct responsibility that if he said no to people like asking for help, then that was, he had to commit to that and bring justice to that situation. However, before anyone asked him to, he was living his life. He didn't care who was in power because he had no moral responsibility. No one asked him for help. Number two, dignity. Hussein knew that if he bent the knee and joined Yazid, despite Yazid going against everything his grandfather and his uncle believed, his great uncle, then he would be selling out his dignity. And a life without dignity is truly not worth living. That's what his belief was. Your dignity is all you have. They can take everything away from you. They can take away your they can cut off your body parts. But as long as you have your dignity, then you're still a force to be reckoned with. And finally, the idea of inner freedom. Inner freedom is often confused with the freedom that, like, oh, I'm not a slave to this, or this person doesn't control me. But no, that's more of an outer freedom sort of thing. Inner freedom is the ability to make decisions without greed or fear. When you think, what am I going to do in this situation? You have to do that self reflection to say, am I being controlled into this decision? Am I scared of something to be making this decision? Am I hoping for something in return when I make this decision? While the story of Hussein is very much based in a war and a battle and death and murder and destruction, the lessons from it can really be translated into a lot of life based lessons. The decisions that you make on a day to day basis, guys, have to follow a very similar path where you're not doing it out of greed or fear. Okay. So I'm going to take everything I just told you guys and try to answer the two questions of today. Is the idea for the greater good morally acceptable? In my personal opinion, I believe, and I'll probably get half guy for you to pitch in here as well, Theo.
Yeah.
Um, I think when you say for the greater good, meaning that it's okay to sacrifice some or sacrifice, something for a greater the greater number of people being happy. When you say something like that, it goes directly against a lot of morally acceptable things because you live your
Mhm.
life, right? And if within your life you have decisions on whether sacrifice these people to save those, that should not be something that you do. I don't know how to explain it. It's like that should be out of your hands. You should never have to make that choice because you shouldn't have that power over anybody, right? It's okay, well, I want to defeat my enemy, but is it okay to starve the population in the city to do it? No, it's not. Even if your enemy is the worst person ever, and even if their people believe in him, it's still something you shouldn't do. You should not bring victory for your cause through the suffering or through any moral wrongness whatsoever. And I'll translate this into the Bible, some words from the Bible itself. Love your enemy, right? And then Afka,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
can talk about that more yourself. Um, but but yeah, that's for the greater good option. And for our second, or sorry, for that question, for our second question, how far should you and can you go to achieve your personal goals? Another major thing that I took from this and from a lot of other readings that I've done is that every goal of whether it's happiness you have, whether it's goodness for your family, for the people around you, if they are damaging to society or others, then they are completely morally wrong. If by bringing wealth to your family, you have to lie and screw over someone at work to get them fired or something, that is wrong. And despite what you do with that money, even if you donate it to charity, you being in that position every single day is an act against God and the words of God. Whether it's cheating on a test, you've sold your dignity out to achieve a goal. That's wrong. And these are things that I'm not judging anyone on because all of us have done it, but it's things that we should at one point start to really reflect and um, look at to see like what the hell are we doing. So that's my stance on that. Theo, if you want to go ahead and sort of talk about your own points or add on to
Yeah.
mine and then talk about yours, you can do whatever. Then we'll do a final little,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
I'll start by saying, from my point of view, I 100% agree with what you concluded from that story. Your answer for whether the greater good is morally acceptable. And how far can you go to achieve your goals.
Hmm.
Um, what I wanted to start with is in Christianity, there's a big deal about sin, and a lot of people understand sin as doing a bad thing, but spiritually, I believe that it's closer to straying away from the will of God and being separated from God. So when you look at the greater good as, well, if I sin here so that a benefit can come out of it, I don't believe that's valid at all because when you sin, you're straying away from God's intentions and God's plan. And I think, in my beliefs, a big goal is to stay steadfast and have faith that as you do good, as you be kind to others, as you love your neighbors, that you will you will achieve more good than what you might believe to achieve by committing even just a small sin for what you judge to be a greater good.
So,
I have
to
sort of,
interject,
yeah,
would you say that
yeah,
from both of our point of views, that if the option is you can sin here to achieve a greater good, then that is the wrong option, and that there has to be a different option to where sin isn't involved at all? Would you
yeah,
agree that
exactly.
that's the basis of it? Like, don't there should
Yeah, for
be
sure.
a third choice or a second choice where no sin is involved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have sort of three people in the Bible that I kind of wanted to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
And they're from the Old Testament, so you might know them, their stories.
Hmm.
It's King Saul, King David, and King Solomon.
Yep.
And this was sort of during the time of, it was right after Israel, the old nation of Israel, was
Hmm.
founded. They lived in the land of Canaan and they fought against their enemies constantly. And you had all these prophets who worked day in and day out to keep the Israelites on the right path, to stay faithful to God and not to adopt pagan practices and do evil things. And so you have Saul. He's the first king of Israel. When Israel demanded a king, God had one of his prophets anoint Saul, and he started out as a good man, I believe. He led the Israelites, he brought them to victory in their battles, but one thing is, returning to our points about the greater good, is this king, he would stray away from God. And maybe if it was things that he believed that would bring more benefit to his people, he would sin and he would stray away from the will of God. And after a while of this, God had his prophet anoint a new king, David. And there's a story of Saul. He had learned that David had been appointed to become the next king. And he became incredibly jealous and he went to hunt David. And David, this is the same David from David and Goliath. He was a young man, a shepherd boy. He showed great faith when he stood against the giant when called upon. And Saul had gathered these men to go hunt David. And at one point, David had become almost cornered in a way. He had
Hmm.
hid in a cave, and Saul had entered the cave. I believe it was um, I'm not too sure about the specifics, but Saul had entered the cave where David was hiding, and David had the opportunity to kill Saul, to kill the king of Israel, and to uh, take his rightful place on the throne. But that would be a sin to kill a king like that and stab him in the back in the dark. So
Hmm.
instead, what he did was he cut off a piece of his cloak, just a small corner of the cloak. And after Saul had exited the cave, David followed, and he showed the piece of the cloak that he cut off and said, I had the opportunity to kill you, but I chose to spare you. And this made Saul break down and weep and ask for forgiveness.
Hmm.
And that's one story that I want to talk about, how you could look at this and see a king that has strayed away from the will of God. He's been following pagan practices. He has been doing bad things. When you have the opportunity to kill this king to take that spot, and some people might think that, well, you just kill one man to save many. And that's sort of what I'm getting at. But David chose to spare him.
Save him.
And
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, and that had a great effect on Saul.
Hmm.
And sorry, just trying to collect my thoughts here.
Yeah. No worries.
But yeah, you have these three kings. David eventually took the throne, and he was like how Saul began. He was a good king and he did what was right. But as time went on, he fell into temptation and he began to sin. And the next king, King Solomon, he is praised as this very wise king. He wrote many of the proverbs in the book of Proverbs. He's said to be the wisest man in the Bible. But like David and like Saul, he began to fall into sin. He married many people, and it started out as maybe he would marry someone for a political alliance to strengthen his position to protect his people better. But eventually he had many wives, and those wives led him to adopt pagan practices to fall into sin. And the reason why I want to talk about these three kings is because I want to emphasize the point that I don't think it matters who you are. You can be chosen by God to lead a kingdom, but everyone can fall into sin and fall down that path the same. And relating that back to this greater good idea is, even if you make these small concessions, small, yeah, small concessions, you give a little bit here so you can do better here. I think that can begin to slip. I think when you start to make that choice, when you start to judge what is right, I think you can quickly lose yourself in that sense. So going back to, is for the greater good morally acceptable? I think my answer to that question is absolutely not, because it should not be to you to decide
If it is
what
actually for the greater good. Yeah.
exactly, if it's
Hmm.
worth it. And when you do that, it leads you down a slippery slope into worse and worse practices.
Yeah. No, I like your interpretation of that. That was it's a very great story too, with the cloak and stuff. Like I've read about that once. I don't think I've ever heard of that story, and you brought it back and made a really good point with it. Now, to be fair, we have to also like take the obvious like question. So, what if it's not reasonable? What if it's not realistic? In your situation, what if it's not a realistic thing? Like you might lose everything if you don't do this one thing, right? And like I've heard this a lot from a lot of political like leaders and stuff. It's like, oh, our entire nation will be wiped out if we don't do this. If like you see a lot with Israel today too. They say the same things. And the people believe
Mhm.
that and follow that, even just regular people. So, um, the way I want to position my idea on this question, it's it goes really deep into our existence and everything, but at the very core of it, I would like to say that our lives have only two guarantees. When we're born, we're into the world, it's one guarantee. And when we die, that's the next guarantee. Now, we have no power to control or change either of those things. And the only thing that we do have power of is the actions that we do and the outcomes of the actions that we do. Now, if you are someone who truly believes in their religion, whether it is Christianity or Islam, you have no doubt about it, then as someone with those ideals, you can never, ever say that to do this sin, I can save my nation, so it's okay. Because you don't know that. Like, maybe it's
Mhm.
better for you to die in that situation. Maybe it is okay for your nation to be wiped out. Maybe maybe God will support the next generation. Whatever it is, you don't know, right? So the only realities that you know in your life is that you're going to die one day, and I rather make sure that I have followed God's words perfectly to the T, not committed sin in any scenario for any reason, so that when I die, when that final truth reality hits that I'm going to die, I don't have any regrets. Because you have no idea what the outcome of your decisions are. And if we want to follow our guidance, then we should, despite however bad it might be, you should do it. And an example for this I have is, I think, the Old Testament story where God orders, I don't know which prophet it was, but he was ordered to like kill his newborn or to strike his newborn or something.
I think
And
that's um,
what?
Abraham.
Yeah.
God commanded Abraham to sacrifice
Yes,
his
to
son. Yeah. Mhm.
sacrifice his son. And that's an insane thing, right? Like no person would want to do something like that. However,
Mhm.
Abraham listened. After thinking about it a bunch, he listened and he went to do it. And as he was going to do it, God stopped him. And that was a test of faith and a lesson to us that, hey, you're going to be put into these insanely tough choice situations where you have a choice to deny God's commands and live a little easier, or take the hardship to follow the word. And that's, again, I relate that back to the goals and the greater good. It's out of our hands, and whatever deliberations we make, whether it's on an individual level or on a political and governmental level, whether you're a leader of a nation, like you said, a king of a nation, or just a regular guy, as long as you follow the words of God and not commit sin, then the outcome of your actions are good. That's the only truth we know. Yeah, do you have anything to say for that?
If I could add on to something, yeah, if I can
Yeah.
add something onto that, I wanted to bring up like the martyrs, like Islam and Christianity both regard martyrs very highly. And I
Hmm.
think stories of the martyrs can be very inspiring to non-believers as well, because in many of these stories, it isn't someone fighting against an authority with their fists, with their sword. And Christianity, at least, I admit that I haven't done a lot of research into notable martyrs in Islam,
Hmm.
but like many martyrs in Christianity, they're persecuted because of their faith. They're being forced to give up their faith or to sin essentially into doing something against their faith, whether that be um, committing an act of violence or something like that. And it's the steadfastness that they show in their beliefs and just non-compromising in that they will stay true to their beliefs and the word of God that inspire me, at least inspires me very much.
Hmm.
And I think you can see what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, it's the red lines you draw in your life, right? It's like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm not budging on this issue. And a very interesting topic that's close to home, it's whether like Iran should close a deal with Israel and America, for example.
Mm.
The argument is that, hey, a lot of us are poor, the economy's terrible, people are going to starve, people are being bombed. We should make a deal. However, this deal would, include a lot of things that go against a lot of our beliefs and traditions and everything. And so it's that question for, is the government evil for condemning people to more war because they're not signing the deal? Or would they be doing something wrong by signing the deal and crossing our boundaries of faith, right? So
Mhm.
it's a really, really tough, like, when it comes down to huge levels like that, it's a really tough thing to like have a straight answer for, it's
Mhm.
definitely not easy. And I think the best place to start is with our individual battles. Um, and after, we're all young here, but after years of fighting those battles within, I think near the ends we should get to the right answers for a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Theo. I loved your the picks for your stories. I'm going to open the chat or the VC. Uh, do you guys have any counterpoints, questions, whatever it is you can ask? Um, I'll give you guys like a few minutes to gather your thoughts, but then right after, I'm going to bring up one other point, one question for Theo, and yeah, I'll get your answers. You guys should be able to speak now. If you guys want to try to unmute, see if it lets you. All right, go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I think you guys are in agreement though. Like you guys both proved the answer correct that it's not your job to basically do the greater good if it involves going against God, basically.
Hmm.
Because of it because God has the greater good. He will bring the greater good.
Yeah, it's ultimately never like in your hands to see like
Yeah.
what it is, right? But no, like I said earlier, the goal of this podcast is more of a it's finding the answers in a life full of lies, pretty much. For people, when we ask questions about everything, um, a lot of people don't, but a few of us here, like, we're always questioning everything. And when that's the life you live, it's hard. It's a hard reality to live. So the goal of this podcast is just take a step together with our two combined faiths towards this correct lifestyle. And I do think we will find a lot more similarities than differences. But yeah, no. Thank you, Aaron. Spec, did you have something to say? Spec, no? Okay. Sam, Oz, anyone? If not, I'll bring up another point. All right. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about, and um, so do you know who Ibn Sina is, Theo?
No, I don't recognize.
So he's pretty much the man who like founded algebra within the Islamic golden era. He was a mathematician, psychologist, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, him and a few other people, especially a more recent person, um, Morteza Motahari. He was a Persian. Um, they wrote about something very important, and a lot of these decisions that we see leaders make, people make, people with influence make, has a lot to do with this. And I wanted to just ask for your opinion on it, see what the Bible says about it as well. Um, I think so. Within the Quran, we are extremely encouraged to research and do science and to find out the truths of art of nature. And I think the Bible has something similar as well. But what these people talk about, these philosophers that have been working on these topics for years, is that a life, a faithful and religious life, has to, like, completely has to contain science and religion. It cannot be leaning one way or the other. It has to be a perfect split. Your faith has to have both logic, science, and faith and religion and morality in it. The way they
Mhm.
explain it is that science as a is a tool for us to carry out our goals, right? The tools of science we make inventions out of to make our lives easier. We do this, we do that with it. It's a tool for our will to be sort of made. It's our language, our tools, pretty much. Faith is what keeps those tools being used in the right way, you know? It's a man that has access to all the technology in the world but has no morality and faith is the person that's going to drop a nuclear bomb on us, right? A man
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
has access to all the technology and all the science, but no faith, is going to drop bombs on Palestinians. Same thing on the other spectrum. A man that has all the religious, or only religion, and no science or logic is the person that's going to be controlled as a soldier for these people. They use their faith
Mhm.
against them because they don't think. They don't have that logical understanding and scientific reasoning. So, another thing that has also been something I've been thinking about a lot, listening to, you know, these loud speakers of each religion, whatever they are. Like I've heard both of them, these debaters, and they yell at each other and whatever. It's just it
Mhm.
makes me upset almost. It's like we're living in in this world where we've lost that sort of balance between our logical thinking and our religion. So we have people that are super on one side, they're fanatics with their religion that have no idea. Like we have ISIS, right? Like that's
Mhm.
exactly what happens when you have all religion, no logic. And then we have on the other side, we have people like Donald Trump who have all the power and science and technology and wealth, but they don't have that moral check inside of them to check their actions, right?
Mhm.
So I was wondering if there was any like biblical thing for that, as well as like what you just thought about what I said, like because I'm not criticizing, but I think there was an era within Christianity where a lot of scientific like thought was pushed out a little bit. So I was
Yeah.
wondering like, what was that all about, and what you think about it.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, like you've mentioned it before, and I'm very much the same, but like very logically minded
Hmm.
as well as seeking spirituality. Like I'm very into science and the sort, and I think when you look at Christianity as well, for much of church history, the two have been there have been times where it's been unbalanced, but I think biblically it is supposed to be balanced.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard many times from church bishops, I think even the Pope, and many church fathers saying, and scientists as well, saying religion and spirituality is the why, and science and mathematics and logic is the how. You don't
Exactly. Yeah.
look at the story of Genesis to see how the world was created. You look at it to see why the world was created and why we are here. And
Mm-hmm.
to go into when it's unbalanced, like I think I've seen this in many occasions on like both sides arguing, pointing out religious fanatics, and I kind of just look at it and I say it's the same results
It's the
on both
same,
sides.
yeah, same problem causing the same result. Exactly. It's yeah.
Like you mentioned ISIS, and but like you also have the Baghdad House of Wisdom in the medieval times, like where Mecca and the Middle East under Islam was a scientific
Mm-hmm.
bright spot in the world, while uh, Christianity in Europe was going through sort of a similar um, fanatic time and some dark times with kings controlling fanatic people.
Yeah.
And then
It
you
was
also
used
have
as a way of control, right? It was encouraged
Mhm.
for people to be ignorant and to be used. Like, it's happened in both regions, like many times.
Yeah. I think the best outcome I've seen on both sides is when sort of both sides are celebrated and pursued, like when the church uh, funds universities and education all throughout the Middle Ages. Monasteries preserved much of literature. And
Mm.
I mean, you look at the Pope nowadays, and he's calling a quote unquote crusade against AI and sort of unethical practices in not religion, science and
Mm-hmm.
advancements.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with everything that you brought up.
Yeah, and I was pretty sure, like, I think in both the Quran and the Bible there is a challenge from God to, hey, go seek out science, like go seek out the secrets of nature, which is yeah, what I was looking for an answer. I'll give you guys some quotes from Mortaza Motahari, and um so he says, science and faith make man whole. Science is the beauty of reason, faith is the beauty of spirit. He also says that faith and science go hand in hand to keep each other in check. Faith without logic is turned into blind fanaticism. An ignorant believer is easily controlled. Science without faith is a sword in the hand of a maniac. And another man by the name of George Sarton, he says science had gigantic progress in certain fields. These are all people from hundreds of years ago, so it's insane that they knew so much more than us now. But he says science has had gigantic progress in many fields, but in others like politics, nation, and internationality, we are still fooling ourselves. So I really do think that I'll give you guys another um, sort of more real life example. It's we have had multiple human revolutions within our governance. You know, we started with the tribal at times. We then started having kings and queens and stuff like that. Then we had this whole democracy era where we truly thought that this would be freedom for people. You know, we had democracy, we had all these governmental systems. And the question really is that can humans have this final revolution within our systems to create a perfectly fair and proper way of leadership and nation and
Mm.
all of that? when is this final revolution going to come? It's probably not within our lifetimes. I'm pretty sure of that. But at some point, it has to come. And I believe personally that the only way that it can come will be through the conjoinment of faith and religion and or sorry, if of faith, religion and science in all of the actions that we take and all of the decisions that we make. And only then can we create this final fair revolution of leadership and government to where all of the issues, right, all of the inequalities between everyone, discrimination between everyone, all these things, all these ideals like communism to each for each need, what is it, how does it go, for their need to
To
their,
to each one's need, from each one's ability to each one's need.
yes, whatever that is, like, then there's
Mm.
nationalism, there are all these ideas, all these ways. There has to be a perfected way eventually at some point that humans can achieve, and I think that's the only way to it. um do you have anything to say, Theo, regarding that?
I don't think I have anything to add to it, but I like the idea. I just wonder, considering the way that we're going, does it look like something like that will ever happen?
I don't think
Or maybe
anytime
you think
soon. But
we'll bomb ourselves into dust before that happens?
I mean, it's
But yeah, no,
sad.
it's
It's sad that we won't be able to see something like that, you know.
yeah.
I do think at some point though, based on how much we have achieved from the era of Homo sapiens to now, that there will one day be that, that golden day where we find out the answer. But yeah, no. I'll take questions from everyone. If you guys do have any questions or comments, the chat's open, I believe. I'll give it like 30 seconds. All right, perfect. So, what I want to talk about next week, guys, next Friday, it's going to be very heavily based on what our existence is. So, a lot of arguments, both Christian, like, there was an era a few hundred years ago where Christian scholars, Muslim scholars would have huge debates and philosophical arguments over what our existence is. Is a human from birth? Do we become human um only once we get that like spiritual sense within us? When is consciousness, when does it begin? Another main argument is whether are all humans born with like born with seeking God and justice and all these things? Are we born with that within us? Or is it
Mm.
the society and history around us that give that to us, for example, a nationalist and communist argument is that humans are born with nothing, like no knowledge, no consciousness, and only after living in a society and through history and generations do we our ideals and beliefs, right? So that's one of their viewpoints. An Islamic viewpoint is that we're born with it. I think it's similar to Christianity. So we're going to talk about what our existence really is, or like what separates humans from animals, and we'll use
Mm.
both biblical texts and Quran texts, and I encourage the audience as well for you guys to bring up any findings you have that we might not cover. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening to Two Paths, One Search with myself, Irfan, and my buddy Theo. Theo, hello. Say
Yeah.
say bye.
Bye,
uh,
guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to guys just talking about this.
yeah, thank you guys. And yeah, have a great day. Bye bye.